Hey, Chris. So it looks like you're up for another full review, so I'll just spend a chunk of time on this. Happy to do more check-in updates if you want to after that as well. So, first of all, really good work. You said you digested it all when I sent it, and working on it. Really good drives, but consistency isn't there yet. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Just keep hammering it, and the consistency will come. Way better with your motion, though. Oh, that's not what I want to do. That's interesting. I didn't know that was a hotkey. Huh. Okay. Here. If I can pull up, here's the first vid. I'll play it full speed and then I'll slow it down, I guess, because it's a short clip. So infinitely better balance. Your rear foot stays put instead of it kind of throwing forward like it was doing last time. Your head stays put instead of throwing forward like it was doing last time. So your motion is incredibly more balanced, and that's where power comes from, is balance. So like I'm tempted as a coach to say, that's great, love it, keep doing that, and not criticize at all. Come on, YouTube. What are you doing? We know Yanni is cool, but we're not doing a review for him right now. But anyways, so I don't want to be critical because this is amazing. This is excellent progress, like faster than 90% of people make. That's not where I clicked, I swear. YouTube. Okay, so but if we're being nitpicky here for the sake of you being able to make more progress, the two things I want to make you aware of, and it's not even like we need to spend energy trying to change them right now. It's just these are things you could play with if you are so motivated and have extra time to work on them. So what I see is the front arm with the disc is early and the rear arm without a disc is late. So what I'm looking at is your hip movement, your rear hip dropping down with gravity as it relates to the timing of your front arm. And so your hip is starting to come down and your elbow is going forward as it's coming down. So I'll have to look at, maybe I can pause and find my video of me and see if I do it the same way or not. But and this is the experiment part, is like play with it and see what you think. But I would want to see you be able to have the hips go first, emphasize that so that the hips go and then the arm gets pulled. So it's like, it's the feeling of lag. Like I hate that word because it's misused so much in our sport. But I would want you to be able to feel that excessively in this drill. So that's one thing. I'll do a quick demo of that. And then the other thing is that the off arm is late. Like here, it's winged out a little bit and it's just rotating around. And then after you release, your rear arm extends down a little bit more. Your fingers go from pocket height down to knee height. And I want to see that drive in the offhand sooner. So let me do a demo of that before I forget about it. If I can find out where my mouse is, there it is. Okay, so lag, emphasize lag, and change the timing, arm timing a little bit. So the lag thing is I want you to be able to slow down your arm and speed up your hips so that it looks like this. So that the hip is clearly going first and then the hand is going. That was a good one. That will, like I got a little blood pressure spike in my finger there. That's good. So that's the timing you want. Like when you pull the arm forward as the hip is rotating, you mess up the kinetic chain sequencing from the ground up. So like almost everyone throws that way. Guys who are stuck at 300 or 350 and trying to push to 400 or beyond almost always throw like that. Like they're not actually getting the force from the ground to come into their hand because they're pulling their hand forward ahead of any torque that would have happened in their hips. So we need to really learn to wait and teach our body to just hang out here at reach back, let the hips do their thing, and then add power to the arm. So if you add power to the arm too early, it messes everything up. So I just want you to be able to feel that and exaggerate that the power is coming from the hip and then it's going to come out in the arm, not the power is coming from both things at the same time. You can still swing your arm fast that way, but it's not going to get you the consistency and the power that you want to get to 400 or 450. So hope that makes sense. Ask questions if it is not clear. But on the whole, your balance is 1,000,000% better. And this is form that will take you places. Okay, let's move on. But first, we could talk about the offhand. So your offhand, you have a good like raise up, and then it just comes down to here and it comes around like it's in this shape as your torso rotates. And I really want it to be doing something different than the torso. So what I want you to move towards is, and if this is too much, don't worry about it. Like the offhand is not super important. But if you want to play with it, again, it's up to you to experiment how you see fit. You want that. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, not 1, 2, 4, 3. So you want this to peak out down. So 1, off arm up, 2, peak reach back, 3, this comes down slightly ahead of your hip. Boom, boom. And then the arm comes through. So just try having more intention down towards your brace foot with your offhand. And a good way to feel that works for me, I lost a disc in my own basement. That's funny. So there it is. I can get here with a fan and use my off arm well and throw as hard as I want to within reason and stay here. If I don't use my off arm, I get a little bit of squeak spin out. So that's a good way to like stress test it, but it's the downward motion here that helps you anchor, and that helps you understand the timing, because your arm is just hanging out here as you follow through, and then it goes down as it starts to extend, and you really want that to kind of peak a little bit sooner. Then when you transition that into a run up, you'll naturally pump a little farther forward, and it'll turn into Drew Gibson's little swoop thing where the hand comes here and then changes to a swim move and spins up that way. So play with that if you want to, not a biggie. Let's jump back to your second video. So we'll ignore that one. Go back to Discord and go to your second one. Okay, so first one was just head centered on one leg. Absolutely perfect, nailed that one. Slight arm timing adjustments to add for the next level. And then this one, you're trying to over-exaggerate staying behind the brace. And you say that was really helpful, cool. Man, YouTube is like off in terms of where I click. Okay, let's slow you down. Interesting. So I kind of see what you're doing here, and it's that is good. That front extension is good. This is not good in terms of knee safety. So your toe is pointed that way, and your hips are pointed this way, that means there is torque on this leg. We don't want to put torque on the leg because that's how tendons get hurt. So if it doesn't feel bad, it's not a big deal. I threw it like that for a long time. But be very mindful. If anything starts hurting or getting sore, stop, reassess, check in with me, and we'll get it figured out. But so what's happening here is there is too much hip drift. So here, your hips stop right there. And then that's hip drift. So that's your hips moving forward. And they're moving forward to where they're too close to vertical over your front foot. From that position, you cannot brace. You can pump up, you can extend your front leg and get some pop, which works, but it messes up your swing plane because you set up your swing plane here, and then your front leg extends and your swing plane lifts up at the end. So that's not what we want. You're probably doing a good job of feeling power from the front leg here, but you're doing that at the expense of swing plane integrity, if you want to use fancy words. So what we really want here is we want to free up this foot to where it can step out here. So as you're doing that hip drift, one, try to minimize the hip drift as much as you can. You want a strong pressure shift without a big hip shift. I'll demo that before I get too ahead of myself. But you want to allow this foot to pick up and step down here, and that'll change the angle of the front leg so that this pushing on the ground, instead of it just pushing your hips up, it can push your hips up and back, and that will stop the swing plane rising too much. So let me demo the hip shift thing I was talking about before I forget about it. Okay. So you want to avoid, if you're in your like standstill position and your hips drift forward, you want to avoid that, because then you end up with a long leg in the back and a short leg in the front. And this cannot possibly contain my momentum at all. If I have momentum that way, I'm going to spill forward. There's nothing I can do about it. So rather than my hips drifting a bunch, I want to get in the habit of picking up my foot and setting my foot down aggressively so there's going to be a big pressure shift without a big weight shift. So this is a big weight shift. I'm moving my center of gravity forward. I don't need to move my center of gravity distance. I just need it in motion. So I can get it in motion quickly and stop it quickly. That's all you need. That was a pressure shift, right? Like I hurt my foot because there was so much pressure in it. Like you can easily get up to 150, 200% of your body weight by stopping on one foot. So don't drift your hips, shift your pressure and stop. That's a lot more what we want. So do exactly what you did, but set up here, right? So I'm programming heel forward into my motion, into my warm-up motion. And then I'm trying to keep this knee shift linear, so there's no rotation. The rotation happens in my pelvis. So I'm gonna step forward, plant my toe, rock the weight into the heel, and then fire this leg, and all the rotation is gonna be limited to here. So my leg is still pointed that way with my toe. At some point in a full throw, I will shift my weight into the heel and the leg will rock and turn open. That's a pressure relief system, so that I end up avoiding that position that you were in, where my hips are all the way forward and my foot is still back there. That's no good. That's twisting all the knee ligaments, and that's how injuries happen. So as quickly as we can, we want to make sure we're not doing that. There's a big long video on knee safety on the channel. I don't know if I sent that to you yet. If I haven't, definitely go look it up. It's all just about the linear knee thing. Because once you get that working, once you have this mechanic that the leg is just going to stay linear, then you can do a whole bunch of stuff that would normally hurt your knee, and it won't hurt your knee, because once you load it right, you can press on it a bunch, but you want to avoid that twisting force that you have. Okay, so let's pop back to you. Boom. So then the other thing is just the level change that happens as a result of hip drift. So I'm just going to catch like arbitrarily the bottom of your t-shirt. And as we go forward, those two frames are fine. And then here it starts going up. So that's maybe 3 inches, which doesn't seem like a lot, but in terms of a swing plane, it is. Because your swing plane started out here, and then by the end, it actually gets corrected to up there. So if you like did your math on this angle, and then it actually comes out on that angle, and it's enough to really screw up your power generation and your accuracy. So I think that's about all there is on that one. And then avoiding that, allowing this. Okay, so one other thing. Avoiding that twisted up position in the first place is another very key safety point. So your foot doesn't really release. There's a little like hiccup half release where it right there it goes burp, but then it gets jammed out again. So what angle are you setting down on? Back to the beginning. Yeah, so you're kind of setting down flat. So there's another safety thing built into the toe to heel rock. So let me talk about that for a second. So if you're gonna work on the standstill like that, which is a great thing to do, program in that you're like, put your front foot on a 45. So it's not flat to my target angle. It's 45 degrees, heel forward. And you're going to start here. So you start initiating your pressure shift here. So start here, 45 degrees, toe up, coil backwards, and then shift and step onto your toe, and then pour that weight into your heel. So, and into your heel and beyond your heel. So your foot is a rocking chair that's gonna rock all the way to the heel and then beyond the heel. So you're going like this. That way you'll have both the ball and the heel down for an instant. That's when your knee locks in to this plane and you can pump exactly like you're doing in your video, but without the twist. So you're firing your leg linearly on a plane this way without any knee twist in it. Then there's an automatic timer because you're going like that. You're going to rock to have all the weight in your heel so that when you pivot, the pivot happens on your heel. And there's an automated point where I'm not ever going to get stuck with both my ball and my heel down, and then I'll get into this twisted leg position. If I pour the weight into the heel and my toe automatically lifts because I put so much weight into the heel, toe doesn't even have to lift, it's just de-weighted, then that spin will happen automatically. So the way to get there is toe down, shift the weight into the heel, and have the heel pivot. So you can just practice that like that. That's super important, knee safety bit. Make sure you do that one. Okay, so the last one is, you says full throw with a very slow X step. You find it easier to get your front leg out farther and therefore stay behind your brace. Sounds excellent. In your X step rather than the standstill. Yeah, so in the standstill, just let the foot step. So it's not a true standstill, it's a one step halfway thingy, but that's fine. So I think that's the fix there. Let's look at this one and see if it looks better. Yeah, a little bit better. Slow you down. Good pump. Yeah, so that's better. There's still the same issue present, but it's less of a big deal. So you still have a long leg, short leg problem in that this leg is long, you're driving off of the toe, pushing the front shoulder forward a little bit too much. And then this leg is shorter because it's bent still. So two ways to look at it. If you want to go the more athletic route, you can just replace this foot to here, and then you'll look more like a pro like Eagle when he's throwing, where he has this big, huge, long, wide last stride. That's really hard to do. It's very athletically challenging. So what's better is actually to limit the hip movement more. So your hips are going to stay back. So in general, just walk slower and stretch the foot out to a more forward position a little bit faster. That can be really hard to change. So the key is to go slower and get the front foot ahead more. But let's look at the rest of the three. Yeah, so there's still too much of that shoulder driving forward. Yeah, because there your shoulder is kind of pokey. It's making an arrow shape like that. And we want to limit the, well, I mean, your angle isn't necessarily messed up there, but the shoulder just looks too pokey. And see you're there's kind of energy being sent from this foot up that way, and you can see that in your head lean too. So given we understand your tendency to throw this way, loop back to the one leg drills and focus on not doing that. So you did that. You built that into your one leg throw quite well. So now that you understand the tendency to do that, loop back to exactly how you're throwing in the one leg drill and make sure that you're aware of the tendency to project force from your rear leg into your front shoulder, and see if you can bridge the gap essentially from a one leg drill to a throw, because that's the whole point of the drill, really. Let me flip to demo mode. So you have a little bit too much driving off of that leg into the shoulder, and that was in your one leg drills from a month ago, because you would wind up and let the head drift a little too much, and then let the head drift forward and try to shoot the leg targetward to counterbalance that. So it's a good idea to counterbalance, but you don't want to do it like that. You want to really get used to this idea of keeping your head and your foot there, which you did correctly in the one leg drill. So just double down on that. That like I'm gonna swing hard because I'm gonna drop my hip hard, and I'm gonna spin my spine hard, and I'm gonna drive my elbow hard, but I'm gonna drop this hand down harder so that I stay right here. So what we're trying to do in the one leg drill is build a stable axis of rotation that rotates in place, because that's what we want in the full throw. In a one leg drill, our power generation is just gravity acting on the rear hip. In a full walk up, it's momentum acting on the rear hip. So I'm running forward and stopping, and I have momentum making my rear hip spin around, and I have a push from the front leg making my front hip go up and back. So the rear hip goes down and forward, the front hip goes up and back, down and forward, up and back, and that creates torque centered on the spine. So again, we have a non-moving central axis of the spine rotating and generating force from a central axis that is strong and stable and not moving. So that's the core idea. So you can loop back to the one leg drills and double down on that concept and getting that to feel good in your body. And then when you go to a full X step, you can get that feeling to happen right here, where it's the same spine torque without needing to drive off of that rear leg. So just ping pong back and forth between one leg drill, working on the changes we've talked about, and filming a slow X step exactly like you're doing, and seeing if you can get more of the feel of the one leg into it and less of the feel of driving off the rear leg into a pokey shoulder. So that's that. Easier said than done, but you're making really fast progress, like top 5%, I would say, by far. So that's cool. I think you will continue to do that. Man, I changed how my monitors are set up and I cannot get my mouse to go to the other monitor. Okay, so that's this video. Let's double check. Make sure there isn't anything else we need to look at. So again here, this is too much head forward, too much eyes down. So you want your eyes down, but this way. And then only on the follow through do your eyes come up to find the disc. So there's still, you've done an excellent job reworking your mechanics on the one leg drill, and those have not yet carried over to a full X step, which is totally to be expected. But hopefully I'm making the differences clear enough that you can bounce back and forth between one leg drill, one step, and full walk up, and see if you can get the full walk up to have more of the feel and more of the biomechanics of the one leg drill, the way that you executed it. So again, there's just a little too much hip drift forward, like those frames there, drift, and then when you start rotating, your hips are a little too far forward over your front leg. Off arm is just tucked. That's a fine placeholder, but the off arm is not helping you get down into the brace yet. So play around with the off arm in the one leg. And then the head is coming up and forward the whole time. So you're not really building that central stabilized axis yet. Everything's still kind of drifting forward a little too much. So again, just bounce back and forth between the one legs and this throw and see if we can move more of those changes into the full throw. And then one more, throwing into a net, focusing purely on getting the heel planted forward. That is a wonderful thing to work on. That is very hard. I spent like 6 months. Yeah, that's great. That looks great. Nailed it. 100%. Look at it again slower and make sure I didn't miss anything. Play again. That looks really good though. Nice pump, love it. Yeah, that's definitely shifting behind you, that's good. Still a little bit drifty, the hips are still drifting forward, but and then there's a nice perfect heel turn. Okay, so that's it, nailed it. That's the knee safety piece. So always throw like that from now on, don't do the twisty foot thing. That's great. And then let's see what we need to change to make it a little bit less drifty. That right there is what we need to change. So this foot is setting down on an angle. And what we're going to change is we're going to change it to be 90 degrees. And I think that will fix it. So here, when you have the foot that way, as you shift the weight onto that, everything lines up to that toe. And that gets you too far backwards too early. So you want to start turning backwards right here, right at this frame. When your front foot crosses your rear foot, that's where you really want everything to still be sideways. So your hips, your belt buckle are still pointing straight at the camera. Your rear toe is still pointed straight at the camera. And then from that point onward, that's when everything starts to coil backwards. So your arm is right on time. But we want your belt buckle pointed at your disc still here, and your shoulders pointed at the camera. I'm looking. That looks pretty good. Like, you could make the argument that there's some external rotation starting, but you still end up on a good spot. Yeah, so I think that fixes it. You just change that toe angle. So let me demo that real quick for you. And then we'll call it there because I've already been talking for half an hour. I hope that is useful to you and not me dragging on for too long. So on your X step, even though it's slow, you put that foot on a 45. When you shift weight onto a foot, everything wants to align to that foot. So if I turn that foot here and make my X step here, where its toes at the camera, then everything is going to tend to stay pointed at the camera. And so here, then when my foot crosses, then I can start to coil. What that does is it puts this knee in a position where it can go in, and then you get into this position, which is very good, as opposed to this, where my knee is back 45 with my toe, which then I tend to want to drift my hips too far forward. So try just that change and see if it helps. And that's kind of built into the one legs. This rear leg is not here, not starting with it open, because then my tendency is to drift forward a little bit too much. So you can do a weight shift like you were doing. Just allow the front foot to drift forward. So we don't want hip drift, we want front foot drift, so that I still have a good angle from my hip to the ground. And you can do that with your toe, even turned in, or at least flat. So you're coiling here, you have something to press against, and you come forward and let the knee drop into that position. It's not like that's not a huge power source or anything, but you do want to get into that position versus this position. This is unathletic, and your leg just gets left behind and turns into an anchor. But if you can get up on the ball and drop the knee in a little bit, then you get into this position, which is much more athletic and allows your weight to go down under the brace more, which is what prevents the lifting up thing to make your swing plane lift up. So that's it. That's the change. You're just here and then into your brace. I think that'll help fix a lot of it. If you can just get that change to work, that change is very hard. So start on weight shift, little half step, and then go to a one step where you start together, and then throw, same thing, dropping the rear knee into position, and then go really slowly transition from standstill to a one step to a walk up, and just make sure that you're getting that placement right. So what I do when I'm working on that is I literally go as slow as I can and make my X step as small as I can. Like there's a point where I touch my calves together, and then I know I can't make my X step any longer than that. So if I want to go faster, I have to move my feet faster. I can't take longer steps, because when you take a longer step, that's what turns the toe backwards. So that's the fix. Just move that X step toe to where it's 90 degrees. Once you get the mechanics correct, it's okay for that foot to drift back to a 45, as long as you know how to get off of that leg and get the knee internally rotated again. All right, I think that's excellent. Doing a great job. Just keep trucking. If you can get that fix done and stop the hip drift forward, then we'll be in really good shape, I think. Excellent work so far. Keep it up, and we'll see you next time.